Tom Brady being suspended for the first 4 games, the Pats are still significant favorites, as always, gentlemen, to win the division. But Stephen A., the question to you is, which team has the best chance to challenge the Pats in the AFC East?
Max Kellerman, I'm going to roll with the New York Jets. And I'm not saying it just because I'm here. I'm not saying it just because I love this team. I'm not saying it just because I'm fond of Coach Todd Bowles and McCagnon, the GM. And the fact that they went 10-6 last year, obviously, has me. It's given me reason to be optimistic. Now, they've lost 2 games to the Buffalo Bills. So I do understand there are some people that might think it's Buffalo. I do understand that there are some people, obviously, that think that because Tom Brady is going to be gone for the first 4 games of the season, and some dude named Jimmy Garoppolo.
Jimmy G.
Not Jimmy G.
Jimmy
Garoppolo.
It.
He has not earned a nickname yet. He's thrown as many passes in the NFL during the regular season as I have, okay? No Jimmy G, Jimmy Garoppolo, okay, until further notice. But I'm going to tell you why I'm going to roll with the Jets. I'm going to tell you why I've got this attitude, this positive attitude about the New York Jets. I think signing Ryan Fitzpatrick was pivotal. He is 33. He had an exceptional season last year, even though he wet the bed in the last game of the regular season. They lost to Buffalo twice by the same score, 22-17 each time. The last game of the year, he wet the bed with 3 interceptions, only 187 yards passing. We get all of that. But when I think about the fact that you kept Ryan Fitzpatrick in play, that you have a year of continuity under the belt with his system, with Todd Bowles, Chan Gilly, and those boys, I think along the lines of Brandon Marshall being here and Eric Decker being here. I like the fact that Matt Forte is here now, along with Bilal Powell. Their ability to catch passes out of the backfield. Because if you remember, Bilal Powell was used a lot during screens and what have you later in the season. He was really utilized in that regard. You take that into account, and then you look at defensively. You kept your defensive line intact. You still got Leonard Williams. You kept Muhammad Wilkinson. Sheldon Richardson is going to be around, okay? We hope and pray that it remains that way. I do have concerns in the secondary in terms of Antonio Cromartie being gone and moving Buster Screen from the slot to the outside. I get all of that. But in the end, I just think that Todd Bowles is a damn good defensive mind. I think that Rex Ryan usually bloviates more than he produces. And as a result, I just feel inclined to give the New York Jets the edge over the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, I'm not assuming that they're going to win the AFC East, because even with Tom Brady gone, I still believe that the Patriots are going to win the AFC East, because I think Jimmy Garoppolo will find a way to win at least 2 games with Bill Belichick by his side. They'll probably go 2-2. Then Tom Brady will come back. They'll go 10-2. They'll finish the season 12-4. They'll win the AFC East, but the Jets will have another 10-6 season, and it will be enough to usurp Buffalo and threaten the New England Patriots. I think that's what's going to happen.
First of all, I know why people would, we're asking the question, who would have the best chance if not the Patriots? But the Patriots aren't going to have Tom Brady for the first 4 games. Yeah, but Matt Castle went 11-5. However, they didn't make the playoffs that year. That's the one year they didn't make the playoffs.
And it was 8 years ago.
It was a long time ago, but that's the last time Tom Brady wasn't the quarterback.
Right.
Garoppolo, I'm going to assume, is not on the roster because Bill Belichick says, we just need a backup quarterback. He is on the roster because Bill Belichick thinks he can get the job done if necessary, and now it's necessary. I could see them going 3-1 in the first 4 games. That said, there is a chance here. There's a little chance. And the AFC East, the 3 other teams, there are reasons to recommend them all. By the way, McClendon in the middle now at nose tackle for the Jets, Stephen A., could make a difference. I mean, there are various reasons. That's a top 10 kind of defense. Brandon Marshall is an elite wide receiver, not just a really good wide receiver because the bloom is off the rose. He tends not to get put in the group of elite wide receivers. At least he's not the first name that comes to mind. But he is absolutely an elite wide receiver. Here's the thing about Fitzpatrick, and this is what held me back from picking the Jets until this thought occurred to me. Fitzpatrick's only had 2 decent seasons in his career, 2 good seasons, one in Buffalo and last year with the Jets. And what did those seasons have in common? Contract years. That was his walk year in both instances. And when you think about it that way, the Jets' negotiation with him starts to make a lot more sense. Because what is he entering right now on a 1-year, $12 million deal? A walk year. So we should have a totally motivated quarterback playing under center who's coming off maybe his best season. Certainly one of his 2 best seasons. All that said, Stephen A., when they needed him to do it the most, when it was win and you're in against Buffalo, he choked, which leads me to look at the Dolphins. Once they got Ndamukong Suh in the middle. Now, they were coming off an 8-8 year where their point differential was about even, meaning they legitimately were fundamentally an 8-8 type team. Got a little unlucky last year. Tannehill didn't take a step forward, all those kind of things. Assuming he takes a step forward now, sometimes it takes that little couple years to adjust. Based on health, with Ndamukong Suh in the middle, Cameron Wake could legitimately challenge 20 sacks this season. They could have a vicious situation going on up front. So if push comes to shove, I have to pick someone, I'll go with Miami.
You're going to go with the Miami Dolphins?
Sure.
You're going to go with Ryan Tannehill?
Yep.
Am I correct? I just want to make sure I'm correct here.
We'll say the name of the other quarterbacks.
Ryan Fitzpatrick threw for over 4,000 yards last year, completed about 61% of his passes, still hasn't made the playoffs. These same Miami Dolphins that have a new coach, even though Gates did the strongest argument in favor of the Miami Dolphins, as far as I'm concerned, is that Case actually made Jay Cutler look like a quarterback again. I'll give him credit for that, okay? So maybe, just maybe, a miracle could happen.
All
right.
Cutler had a lot more baggage than Tannehill, too.
Yeah, that's true. I actually like Tannehill. I think Tannehill is composed. I think he's a far better person than Cutler in terms of a football player. I don't mean that. I'm not talking about Jay Cutler the person, because I don't know him at all. But I've said it before, and I'll say it religiously. The only time I've ever seen Jay Cutler smile is when he was signing his contract, stealing money from the Chicago Bears organization and hoodwinking the city of Chicago. That's the only time I've ever seen him smile. Outside of that, he looks like a depressed puppy that just disintegrates and depresses everybody around him. And as far as I'm concerned, Gates deserves all the credit in the world for what he did with Cutler. But last time I checked, Chicago didn't go anywhere last year either, even though they improved. So I'm going to assume that Ryan Tannehill can improve in Miami. I think losing Lamar Miller is going to hurt. I think their wideout situation is questionable. Even though their defense could potentially be very, very good, you got a bunch of temperamental dudes on there, and that's a problem. And then we're talking about the AFC East. I'm thinking about Buffalo and some of the personnel that they have. I'm thinking about the fact that Rex Ryan, even when the Jets stunk, yes, they stunk. They were right here, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm going to tell you right now, they stunk for 4 years. Thank God Todd Bowles arrived here. But Rex Ryan did take them to 2 consecutive AFC championship games the first 2 years. From there, sort of nosedived. What happened? The defense was stout, but he had no offense. What makes it interesting in Buffalo,
you got a kid who can play quarterback.
He's on a clock.
Yep.
Rex Ryan's on a clock now because Tyrod Taylor can flat out ball.
He can play quarterback.
And because he can ball, and because you got LaShawn McCoy and Carlos Williams as your running back, because you got Sammy Watkins as your wideout, you've got pieces in place that he never had with the New York Jets. But that still ain't better than the New York Jets and what they have here this year.
The sexier picks are Buffalo, who in the beginning of last season looked like they could be a real threat, and certainly the Jets. It's interesting about reputations because you bring up Jay Cutler, the only time he smiles is with the contract. I'll go back to Fitzpatrick again, who is a good quarterback. I mean, he was a good quarterback last year, and here we are at Jets camp, like, you know, you wish him the best. But the fact is, in his career, as I mentioned before, the 2 times he really showed up and played, his 2 best seasons, clearly, were both contract years. And it's interesting that when a guy goes to Harvard, right, like, you know, the branding of him as a quarterback is he must be, and he aces the Wonderlic, of course, as you would assume. His brand becomes he's a cerebral, smart quarterback. And also, I think there's a tendency to think he must be a gamer. After all, how many Harvard quarterbacks are playing in the NFL? When the fact is, he's been mistake-prone and a contract year player. So his brand isn't that, boy, he only shows up when there's the money on the line. But that's, in fact, what happens. Now, that's actually good news for Jets fans because, once again, the money's on the line for him. He should be totally motivated to play. You know, but in terms of comparing quarterbacks and talking about which guys are motivated by the money, I think that's Fitzpatrick, at least on the record, as much as anyone.
Well, yeah, but my point to you is this. You're making my argument for me because you said that entering a contract year is when he's had his best seasons. He's got a 1-year, $12 million deal here with the New York Jets. He's 33 years of age. If he wants to extend his future, particularly in a place where he's home playing Rubik's Cubes while he's getting text messages from his teammates telling them to get this deal done, et cetera, this is not just about a contract. This is where Ryan Fitzpatrick wants to be. This is not just about dollars and cents. This is also about happiness in his respect. Because what he's saying to you is that if he shows up, and what the Jets are saying is if he shows up and produces, this is a guy that we don't mind keeping around for the foreseeable future. And when has Ryan Fitzpatrick had that luxury anywhere?
With the pressure on.
All right.
And I know Rex Ryan wanted to play spoiler, obviously, which he did. But with the pressure on, this guy threw 12 interceptions all season. And when it was win and you're in, he threw 3.
Well, one of them don't really count. I mean, it was a last desperation. It was a last desperation situation. He's really threw a legitimate 2 interceptions.
Which is still more than generally he was throwing. I mean, but when you needed him to be his best, he was at his, maybe not his worst, but certainly not at his best.
But Max Kellerman, if you're going to make an argument against Ryan Fitzpatrick, could you give me somebody better than Ryan Tannehill? Pretty please with sugar on top?
I don't know. When you talk about their potential going into this season, if you just isolate quarterback value, you sure you like Fitzpatrick over Tannehill?
I'm sure I like Fitzpatrick over Tannehill because I like the personnel that Ryan Fitzpatrick is throwing to better than I like the personnel that Ryan Tannehill is throwing to.
I do too, and I also like the additions the Jets have made, and I don't think there's actually much to choose from between Miami, who was 6-10 last year. I think most NFL teams in this AFC East level, other than the Patriots, are fundamentally 8-8 teams. The lucky ones go 10-6, unlucky go 6-10. I think Miami was a little unlucky last year in terms of injuries to key players, etc. In terms of Tannehill not taking the step forward people thought. I think Buffalo, New York, and Miami are all very evenly matched. Miami captures my imagination based on potential a little bit more than New York or Buffalo.
Vegas sees it playing out the way Stephen A. does, with, of course, New England winning, following the Jets, then Buffalo, then Miami. But the question is, outside of New England, it usually takes about 10 wins, right, to get to the playoffs. Are any of these teams playoff teams?
I think that the Jets have the potential to be a playoff team because of the 10 wins. I don't know if they'll make it because I expect the AFC North to be a beast. Unless they're beating up on each other, I can see a scenario where potentially, the Steelers, the Bengals, and possibly the Baltimore Ravens are all in or vying for a spot. Obviously, you're looking at New England. You're looking at, the AFC West is interesting because of Kansas City and Denver. I'm dismissing Oakland and San Diego for now, but it remains to be seen what Oakland will do. But I see San Diego being the last place team in that division. And, of course, I expect Indianapolis to resurrect itself. The playoff team will be the division winner. I don't see a wild card coming out of the AFC South.
No, particularly because they seem to be evenly matched. So there's going to be some attrition in terms of the record throughout the season. I don't see a wild card coming from
I think that battle, it comes down to this. I think there will be the Patriots and one of the teams in the AFC West, and I think there will be a battle for the wild card between the Jets and 2 of the teams in the AFC North.
Yeah, and the Jets are likely to lose that battle. But
probably.
Yeah. All right, let's leave it there. First take just getting started here from Florham Park. Speaking of a guy who should be a lock to get back to the playoffs, of course, Cam Newton. So coming up, Michael Bennett called out Cam, then had to call him again. We'll explain and react. Ryan Clark will join us. More First Take from Jets Camp after the break. Stay here. Since that call out from Seahawks Michael Bennett, he made another call to Cam Newton, this confirmed by ESPN, and he apologized for dragging Cam specifically into the conversation. Stephen A., did he need to apologize?
He did not need to apologize, first of all. And by the way, when we were talking about New England, trust me, I was only joking around. I know Garoppolo's thrown 31 passes in his NFL career. Yeah. Trust me. But let me get back to the situation with Cam Newton and Michael Bennett. I don't think he needed to apologize because I don't think that he said anything where he was trying to disrespect Cam Newton, that he was trying to disrespect star players. What he was saying is that we're seeing stars in other leagues step to the forefront and use their cachet to bring attention to an issue that's really permeating our community and this nation as a whole. And at some point in time, you have to take it upon yourself to recognize who you are, not just for marketing dollars, not just for your team, not just for your local, the local organization that you represent, but for society as a whole. In other words, special times call for special people to step up. I don't think that was him saying, Cam, you're not doing it, you're wrong. This player, you're not doing it, you're wrong. What he's saying is call the action. We need this now. Enough's enough. And it's going to take all of us who have cachet, who have a voice, who have the ability to resonate when we're disseminating a message to the masses, it's received and it's felt and it's impactful. We need you guys to step up. I think if he called Cam Newton to explain that, there's nothing wrong with that. But if he called to apologize, I think it's totally unnecessary because I don't think that he said anything. I didn't hear anything where he was trying to attack Cam Newton in any way or should feel the need to apologize. We are living in this microscope, this microscopic world that we're living in. And we're so concerned about what other people have to say and how they'll interpret what we have to say that sometimes we forget when we speak eloquently, that's exactly what we did. And you know what? We need to stand on those words. If we're right and we're honest, then we're right and we're honest. And rather than display a level of contrition because there's concern on how the message is being interpreted, stand on your words and say, this is what I said, this is what I meant, and that is that. I see no problem with it.
I see a problem with it, and I think he did need to apologize. Now, look, Cam Newton would be right for sitting there going, why is my name in this dude's mouth about an issue like this? You know, what did I do? Now, you're right. His intention may have been fine. But if it's misinterpreted some way or besmirches in Cam Newton's imagination his name, then I think the right thing to do is call him up and say, look, this is what I intended. Let me clarify. And if somehow that got misconstrued, I apologize. I think that's a stand-up thing to do. I'm glad he did it. Why did he say Cam Newton's name in the first place?
Because Cam Newton's big time.
Know.
That's right. He was talking about, in fact, what led his mind to Cam Newton was when he said some of our great players. It was great players that put his mind. Who's the first great player he thought of, who is also African-American, the reigning MVP, just played in the Super Bowl, considered by many, if not most, the best player in the game? Cam Newton. Who is the NFL's LeBron James in that sense? Cam Newton. Now, of course, we understand that the NBA, its previous commissioner, was forward-thinking in the sense that he branded his league with stars. It was a star-driven league. And commissioners in the NFL have always talked about the shield. It's all about the NFL brand, not the star brand. The current commissioner in the NFL, Goodell, rules with an iron fist, right? Okay, we get that. And Adam Silver is a very forward-thinking commissioner who encourages a largely African-American league to take stands on social justice issues, which is great for Adam Silver, not as great for Roger Goodell in terms of, at least in my opinion.
I don't think Adam Silver encourages it. I just think he does not discourage it.
When he's come out and said he encourages it.
It's two different leagues, and it's leagues that have been run certain ways as it pertains to African American players. When you look at basketball, it's only 5 guys on the court, right? And so those 5 guys hold a lot of cachet in the league. If a LeBron goes to one team, it changes that whole team. That's not how it works in the NFL. And when you look at the position of the star in the NFL, it's the quarterback position. Now, African-American quarterbacks have just been fighting to have a spot there, to not be compared to other African-American quarterbacks of the past. You see so many times, like it was with RG3, hey, I don't want to be compared to those quarterbacks. Compare me to Steve Young or compare me to these other guys. And everybody he's mentioned was a white quarterback because you're trying to break that stigma. And so now you have this huge issue, this polarizing issue that's going on not just in Baton Rouge, which is where I live, so I deal with it every day. I'm in the community every day talking about it, treating people differently, showing that we can all be together. You have this huge deal in our country, and you're asking Cam Newton, and you say his name as the only name. I think that's why he had to call and at least explain it to him. This is why I mentioned you. I also don't think it needed to be an apology. It doesn't need to be, Cam, I'm sorry. It needs to be, Cam, this is why I mentioned you. And from that conversation, you now have a conversation of how you think he can affect change.
It's interesting that you say that because that's exactly what I was trying to go with saying. I wasn't saying that he shouldn't call Cam. I was saying that he shouldn't apologize because I think that his message was a level of respect and tribute to the greatness of Cam Newton and the power that he potentially has to affect change. Now, to piggyback off of what Ryan just explained, let me get historical to some degree when you talk about the black quarterback. Well, let's ignore that for a second and just highlight this reality. If you are a black person, whether you were a quarterback or not, on the come up, in terms of trying to make a name for yourself in the National Football League, you didn't endure trials and tribulations? You know, when you think about Jim Brown, when you think about from Jim Brown to baseball with Curt Flood, to basketball with Bill Russell and Lou Alcindor, ultimately Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, to boxing with Muhammad Ali, there was a plight that existed as it pertained to the African-American athlete. Well, what happened is that ultimately, there's a level of change that ultimately took place. Why? Because people who came before them were willing to take stances and fight the good fight to make sure equity and fairness somehow managed to ingratiate itself into the world of sports and beyond. And you used the platform that professional athletes, because of their cachet, had in order to generate that. So a guy like Michael Bennett comes along, and he's looking at somebody like Cam Newton, and he's saying, okay, it's almost like he was saying, it's your turn. Because this is what was done for you, and had it not been done for you, you wouldn't be where you are.
That's why he had to call with an apology. That's precisely why.
I don't think that's why. I don't think it was an apology.
As a professional courtesy, what you do in that instance, before you put his name in it, is call him.
I agree with that.
Text him, get in touch with him, and say, hey, this is what we need to do. Here's the problem. You brought up Muhammad Ali. In his autobiography, largely apocryphal, many parts of, but his autobiography, he had a whole passage about the difference between Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell. And he was talking about what he perceived as Wilt's, for lack of a better term, selling out of where he came from. Now, I'm sure Wilt Chamberlain defenders, and were Wilt around now, he would defend himself. He can't, but that's from Ali's point of view. And he felt that was one of the reasons Wilt couldn't handle Bill Russell, in Ali's words, on or off the court. Bill Russell was down for the struggle in a way that Muhammad Ali felt Wilt Chamberlain was not. Now, Ali had private conversations with Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell, etc. So once he puts that in the public sphere, he's already extended a certain professional courtesy where he's talked about it with these guys. In this case, Bennett owed Cam, we all agree, the phone call, but I also believe in this sense an apology for just to say, listen, before I put your name in it, I should have chopped it up with you.
Right. Well, and see, and like, I understand that, but you also have to understand from the athlete standpoint, there's no preparation. There's no production meeting to that microphone being in front of your face.
Of course.
There's no, here's the list of questions you're going to be asked. And when you're emotional about a topic, when it matters to you, which Michael Bennett has shown us, he's not a guy just talking. This is important to him. And so he wanted to answer this question, and he probably didn't want to give examples that way, but like you said, because of Cam's greatness, because of his spot in that sport, he wanted him to speak up. The other part that I think
agree
is
with
different,
that, by the way. I agree with that. And 1,000 questions a day. It's not a big deal. Cam's reaction should be, I get it. But I do think he owes him that courtesy.
And I think the thing, too, historically, when you talk about the Bill Russells and the Muhammad Alis and the Jim Brown, the plight that they were facing, or that everybody was facing, whether it was in society, in sports, it was all the same. Now it's masked. It's different. Stephen A can walk into certain places and be treated a certain way because he's Stephen A. Cam Newton walks into places and he's treated like the MVP, So right now the fight he's fighting for, or the plight he's fighting for, is somebody outside of that realm. So you have to get yourself to relate to those people. And I think when you're Bill Russell and you're Jim Brown, you're just fighting for equality as a whole. And so I think it's a different way you have to approach these new guys.
Better in a sense.
Things have gotten better. There's no doubt about it. But I'll close it by saying this. To whom much is given, much is required, as we all know. And when you are a black individual in a prominent position, because our community looks at things a certain way, folks from our community expect us, if we have that platform, to speak. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to agree with every scintilla of what everyone says, but to be muted or to be silent while things are going on within your community from which you came. If you have nothing to say, you are going to get the attention of those from your community who are going to look at you and say, excuse me, Do you have something to say? Because we kind of need you to do it.
I want to reiterate what you said earlier, though. Special times call for special people to step up. That's really powerful, and I think that's going to resonate with a lot of different people. Ryan, we're so happy we have you with us the whole week. You'll be back with us in just a bit. When we come back, strong words from LeBron James. We go to the association. He said he's chasing ghosts. We will this ghost I'm chasing. The ghost played in Chicago. I think it's cool to put myself in position to be one of those great players, but if I can ever put myself in position to be the greatest player, that would be something extraordinary. Stephen A., your reaction to King James' comments there?
Well, I think it's a beautiful, beautiful goal to have. I applaud him for having it. He's definitely the greatest small forward to have ever played the game of basketball. He's definitely one of the greatest players in NBA history. He certainly made liars out of all of us, including myself, because I thought they were done once they were down 3-1. And I still, to this very day, think that he kind of instigated that incident with Draymond Green that got Draymond Green ejected. But the hell with criticizing him for it. He won the championship because of it, because I think that series would have been over in 5 games. Having said all of that, let me look into the camera because, you know, sometimes my message gets a bit construed. I want to look into the camera and I want to say this. There is no way in hell that LeBron James will ever be the GOAT. As long as Michael Jordan's legacy is what it is, it will never happen. 6 for 6 with 6 NBA Finals MVP. There was never a sweep by Dow.
Don't interrupt
me. I'm talking.
Games,
I'm talking. That's right. That's right. Don't you get me started. There was never a sweep by the San Antonio Spurs. There was never an epic collapse where the likes of Jason Terry and J.J. Barea, who are both about a foot shorter than him, were defending him. Okay? And, of course, to me, I don't even count last year's loss to the Golden State Warriors. I think that's unfair to LeBron James. He's a 3-time champion. We all know mad respect, a great, great iconic figure. But when you talk about being the GOAT, that means the greatest of all time. Cool J made it famous. Cool J, the greatest of all time. Remember that song. Bottom line is this. You have three finals losses on your resume. You ain't getting around that. The reality is, I don't care what LeBron James does over the course. And by the way, he's elevated to himself to the point where I don't even want to hear criticisms about LeBron's no more. I'm not criticizing him. There's nothing to say. There's nothing to say. He is, the glorified heir. I get that. But there's only one MJ. 6 for 6 with 6 NBA Finals MVP. And like you said, that Game 7 that LeBron James just won against the Golden State Warriors, it never happened with MJ because MJ never allowed the series to get to this Game 7 in the NBA Finals. He is MJ. He is Michael Jordan. He is the GOAT. And the record is flawless. Kobe was 5-2. I mean, this guy, MJ, 6 for 6, unblemished. LeBron can't usurp that. He can usurp a lot of things.
4 finals losses, by the way.
4.
Yeah, 4.
I'm sorry, 4. 3 and 4. 7 finals appearances altogether. 3 and 4 in the finals, yes.
Jordan 6-0 with 6 KOs is what you're saying in the finals. No one ever went the distance.
That's right.
Look, let's put it like this. And for kids who don't understand how great Michael Jordan was, even with advancement in terms of our understanding of the game, how to play more efficiently, and LeBron is a freak for that stuff. He's all in on that. He understands it. He's physically a marvel. The latest weight training, the latest everything, he can keep himself together better than athletes used to. With all of that, a careful analysis of the statistical record using the most cutting-edge analytics has Michael Jordan ahead of LeBron James. And LeBron James's averages are declining as he gets older. So peak for peak, the ship has sailed. I get that. Let me tell you something else about Michael Jordan. Everyone talks, yeah, even Jordan needed to get by the Pistons. He had to learn how to win, and the Pistons knocked him out. That's also nonsense. The first time Jordan played with another All-Star was Scottie Pippen's first All-Star year. He took that Pistons team 7 games, and Pippen couldn't play in Game 7 because of the headache, and they lost. Pippen's PER jumped to prime levels the following year. They swept the Pistons. If you would have given even a young Michael Jordan a prime Scottie Pippen right away, Detroit gets nothing. The Lakers, all those teams get nothing with Jordan in his prime. He's the greatest of all time. However, as Stephen A. would say, When LeBron choked away 4 consecutive fourth quarters against the Dallas Mavericks, it looked like the Jordan ship had sailed, never to return. But a funny thing has happened, Stephen A. He reinvented himself as a clutch player. He has kept the level of consistency, which even Jordan couldn't, because Jordan took those 2 years off, most of 2 years off, and LeBron's just kept going, kept grinding, kept getting deep into the playoffs. LeBron had a finals, not this past finals, but the finals before that, that was so otherworldly that with Matthew Dellavedova as the second best player on the team, he went 6 competitive games with Golden State. Yeah, fine, but what would he do if he had a little more ammunition? Beat the 73-win Golden State Warriors, come back down 3-1. It had never happened. It was certainly very unlikely to happen against a team like that. Draymond Green goes up the hard foul at the end of the game. LeBron comes down on his wrist, misses the first free throw that would have iced the game. Because of the wrist, you could see it was bothering him. Gets his head together, on the line, finals on the line, makes adjustments, hits the free throw to ice Game 7 of the finals. He has now at least forced himself back into the conversation where if he wins another finals this year, of course, peak for peak, you won't be able to argue against Jordan. But when you look at the totality of his career, if he winds up with 6 or 7 finals championships by the time he's all done, you can at least argue, look, if you were drafting players to start their career, Jordan, you know, he took that time off. He went 3, then took 2 years off, then went 3, and then basically was done. LeBron just kept going.
Well, listen.
He's forcing himself back into the conversation.
Listen, I didn't know that I was talking to a motivational speaker. I mean, maybe I should call you Tony Robbins. Just find the goodness in everybody. I didn't know that's where we were going. Of course, you could sit up there and look at LeBron James and say he persevered. He didn't take 2 years off. He didn't try to go and play baseball. If you're Kobe, he didn't facilitate getting Shaq out of town, et cetera, et cetera. You could say all of that about LeBron James, okay? But you also could say this about Jordan. He didn't leave for South Beach. You understand? Or in the case of Kevin Durant, leave for Golden State. No. He stayed where he was. And what they did was they got parts around him. Wait a minute. At the time that they acquired Pippen, you had the Boston Celtics and Bird. You ultimately had the Pistons. You still had the Showtime Lakers out west. Michael Jordan didn't think about leaving because back in those days, they didn't think about leaving. Kobe Bryant had an opportunity to leave, could have left for the Clippers, could have left for Chicago, but stayed in L.A. in the aftermath of Shaq's departure. Why? Because as he told me, on several occasions, on the air and off, he wanted to prove that he could do without Shaq, and he didn't want to be anybody's sidekick. So here you have a situation where even though I have no problem whatsoever with LeBron going to South Beach because he was still the man, he did have D-Wade and Bosh. Kevin Durant, yes, you're going there. But if Kevin Durant, listen, none but respect, Kevin Durant is phenomenal. He's great. But at the same time, am I going to look at him if they win the championship as a champion, the likes of a Jordan, an Isaiah, or even a Steph Curry and a Klay Thompson? No, because you jumped on the bandwagon with them. It's a different. Jordan was the damn bandwagon.
Certainly
Jordan was the bus. He was driving the bus. He was hiring the passengers. He was putting the passengers on the bus, okay? He was taking it city to city. He was the man. That's the difference. And that was always the case. And there was no reprieve. There was no growing process. There was no maturation process that needed to take place. He came on the scene. He was the man, and he stayed the man until he left.
Jordan averaged 28 his rookie year. Then he got hurt in his second year. Came back
and dropped
63. But then people forget that third year he dropped 37. He was already the best player in the NBA. I mean, from that time, well, no, Magic is better. Berta, stop. Jordan was the best player in the league since his third season. Next year he came back 32, 8-8. He's the greatest player of all time. We're on the same page. I will say this, times change. And LeBron James holding him to the same kind of, not just standard, but to the same standards of Jordan's time is not entirely fair to LeBron. Jordan was born into a great situation in the NBA. Eventually, Phil Jackson as the coach, Scottie Pippen, Horace Grant. Now, Pippen's partly his greatness was a result of scrimmaging against Michael Jordan. I get that, too. And Jordan, as I said, is number one. However, it was still a great situation. Later, Dennis Rodman, and he had these great teams with a great coach around him. LeBron wasn't quite that lucky. But in terms of who's driving the bus, look at what cities get to play in the NBA Finals. The answer is whoever's the best out west and whatever city LeBron James is playing in. I mean, basically, that's the Finals every year. Who's the best team in the West and where is LeBron James playing? Because that is going to be the Finals matchup.
But what you're missing is that there's a question mark at least somewhat as to where LeBron James was playing. And the only difference between that and Jordan is that there was no question mark because Jordan wasn't thinking about leaving Chicago. So whereas with LeBron, you had to guess where he was going to be, or with Kevin Durant, you had to guess where he was going to go. In the case of Michael Jordan, there was nothing to talk about. He was in Chicago. He was staying in Chicago. And the only reason why he left for Washington ultimately after retiring a second time was because Jerry Reinsdorf and those boys weren't willing to give him an ownership stake. That's about it.
One more thing about Jordan for kids who don't know, because what I hear also a lot about him nowadays is, well, he wasn't the best athlete. He just wanted it the most. No. Jordan was by so far the best athlete that Sports Illustrated did a piece on him. Is he defying gravity somehow? They wanted to know how he stayed up in the air so long. He had a 48-inch vertical and reportedly a 4.3 40. Jordan at 6'6" with a 48-inch vert could actually go 2 inches higher than LeBron at 6'8" with a 44-inch vert. Jordan was, in addition to everything else, also the greatest athlete. He's the GOAT, and there's a reason for that. We agree about that.
So long as you know.
So here's what I'm taking from this conversation. LeBron is going to stay chasing ghosts. He's not going to catch them, and you're saying there's a chance that he can't catch the ghosts.
I'm saying he's forcing his way. He wasn't even in the conversation a couple years ago.
After this past,
he's forced his way. He's going to go down likely as the greatest non-Jordan, non-big man who ever played basketball.
Right. It's good for him to have this goal because shooting for this goal will probably help him capture a couple of more championships at the very least. But it's not about Jordan's 6 rings. It's about the fact that he's unblemished. It's the fact that he's undefeated. The man never even allowed the finals to go to the 7th game. This is who Michael Jordan was. There's nothing to talk about. Go ahead and chase them damn ghosts.
Also, like
go ahead and chase them.
I hear a lot about competition back then. When he came back that first year back, when he started the second three-peat, he had to go through a 60-win Shaq and Penny squad that had just been to the finals the year before, and then a 63-win all-time great Seattle team. There was plenty of competition. Yes.
Up next from Florham Park, New Jersey, First Take continues. Ryan Clark will be back with us. Russell Wilson, his take on social issues. Who should speak up? Who shouldn't? We react to all of it. More First Take from Jets Camp in a moment. Max, what's your reaction to Russell Wilson's comments there?
It reminds me of Michael Jordan's statement. In the sense that a responsible person can't find fault with anything he said. And I think he spoke responsibly about this issue. I mean, we're saying everyone, this is not just about making statements, essentially, is what he's saying. It's that everyone needs to care about each other. And obviously, Black Lives Matter, although the point, and then he goes on to say all lives matter, you know, police lives matter too, all lives matter. The point of the Black Lives Matter movement, the reason it says not, parenthetically, it's two. Black lives matter too. In other words, it hasn't always been so obvious to everyone that black lives do matter. Black life has been cheap throughout the history of most of the history of this country and continues to be so in many places. And that's the idea of bringing attention through Black Lives Matter. But you can understand why reasonable people don't get that at first, and they say, wait, all lives matter, of course. And so when he says, obviously Black Lives Matter, that kind of speaks to the heart of the idea. No, it's not always so obvious. You can't really find fault with what he's saying. It sounded sincere. He was asked a question about it, obviously. It's not like he just proffered this opinion based, you know, out of the thin air. And yet there is something about it that feels as though no one could possibly be offended by anything in it. And that goes hand in hand with how Russell Wilson is perceived, that he's trying to stay out of it. And by the way, let me just say, that's also his prerogative. I don't hold that against him. I think people who, and I am one of those people who often make a big deal about more people need to use their voices, use the platforms they have. It should also be said that in this era, the social media era, it's much less risky to make those statements. It doesn't take as much courage as it once did. And if the assumption is that everyone needs to be speaking out, then how much credit do you actually give people who do it? In other words, I'm not going to hold it against Russell Wilson that he is a bit milquetoast about this.
Right. I agree with Max in the sense it goes along with who Russell Wilson is. Russell Wilson is everybody's All-American. He's a guy who does a lot of community work. And when he does that community work, you can believe there's going to be a picture of it. I played with a guy in Troy Polamalu who did a ton of things, and there was never a picture because it was always about, let me just go give. Let me just go give back. Russell has done a great job with the perception of himself and with what people see as his brand, and I think that answer goes along with it. I also agree, you can't argue it. He mentioned that Black lives do matter. He mentioned that police lives do matter, that all lives matter. And if you're a sensible person, if you're a person that understands life and how precious it is, you agree with that. I did something with Jason Reed for Undefeated, and I just spoke about the plight of the black man right now. And when he says obviously they matter, throughout history we've shown that they really don't. And recently, we're even being shown even more because what we're seeing now on video has been going on for ages. We just have phones to capture it now. And if you're looking at Russell Wilson, I look at the NFL and I compare it to the WNBA, where the money isn't as big, where people aren't focused on as much as quarterbacks or NFL players. But if you look at the pictures you saw from the WNBA, it didn't matter what color the player was. They all supported that Black Lives Matter. And I think you have to be so image conscious as a quarterback in the NFL, also as a black quarterback, when you don't have these other guys out supporting, when Aaron Rodgers doesn't step up and say something about it, when Tom Brady doesn't step up and say something about it. Now the Russell Wilson and these guys feel like, okay, do I go out on this limb and say that? And when you say Black Lives Matter, it doesn't mean that all lives don't. It's the lives, and those are the lives that are under siege right now. And if Russell Wilson comes out, and I want him to say it, I want him to say, yes, Black lives do matter, and here is why. And when you look at, if you went to a cancer fundraiser and people had on breast cancer shirts, you wouldn't expect somebody to run in and say, hey, diabetes matters too, and it's a killer, because we know that. But right now, we're focusing on this thing. We're focusing on the lives that cancer is taking. So right now, we're focusing on the Black lives that are taken, because those are the lives that are being taken and no justice is being done. So for me, and it's not just, and I'm not a person that can say, hey, Russell, you have to say something. But for me, given that opportunity, I want him to take a stand and be a part of a movement, because Michael Bennett, nobody hears him. Unfortunately, we talk about it, but the guy at Starbucks in Seattle is not sitting around saying, you know what, Michael Bennett said something about Black Lives Matter, and it really resonated with me, because he's not. If Russell Wilson says it, you better believe at Starbucks, when he's getting his latte and they call his name and they say, Michael, come get your cup, he might be sitting next to a guy and say, hey, man, did you hear what Russell Wilson said? And so those are the differences in what he said and what he could have said.
Point.
Very good points. But let's get down to this. First of all, we all know that Russell Wilson doesn't have to say anything. Mm-hmm. It's his choice. He can do what he wants to do. We also know that a lot of times athletes are being asked to do things they're ill-equipped to handle, meaning speak out about issues. You're either not knowledgeable about it or you're not comfortable speaking about it out of fear. And the fear might be something as simple as you don't have the confidence in yourself that you can articulate yourself in a manner that everyone will get exactly what you're trying to say. But I think the thing that goes widely unrecognized, Ryan, Max, Molly, that hasn't been said enough, and I'm going to bring attention to this now, is that when you are a guy like Russell Wilson and you see people, particularly from the black community, that are looking at somebody like him, they're asking for a couple of things. They're asking for you to be fearless to some degree, because that's really one of the battle cries. You've got millions. You're making this money. You're a star. You're set. If you're scared when you are set, what kind of heart do you have? Really, that's how people are looking at you. But they're also looking at you from the standpoint that when you do speak about the issue, are you sensitive to the battle that is there? One of the things that I remember, I'll never forget, my dad once explained this to me, and I've always used this story on many occasions. He said in the 1960s, I was born in 1967, he said, while we were in the throes of the civil rights movement, he said Martin Luther King was about peace. He was about nonviolence. He was about all of these things, just the civil and equal rights for all, okay? He was hit with police batons. He was hosed down. He was beat up. He was incarcerated. He had dogs sicked on him. And essentially, there was a segment of our populace that gave him the figurative, if not literal, middle finger and said, go screw yourself. We don't care what you want. And then Malcolm X came along. And he said, by any means necessary. An eye for an eye, et cetera, et cetera. And then you know what that same populace did? They said, why can't you be more like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? And as a result, all of a sudden, the person that they started listening to, who had been preaching nonviolence from day one, suddenly you wanted to hear him because the alternative was far worse. And you have a segment of our populace in this day and age, right or wrong, and we all know to inflict violence upon anybody is wrong, especially law enforcement officials. But when you're thinking about what the plight is from a certain segment of our population, which in this case we're talking about the black community, obviously you have people with that mentality like that out there by any means necessary to stop what is happening to us. And when you look at people who are from our community, who look like us, who have the same pigmentation, hue, culture, environment, etc., but they've made it. They've made it. And they no longer have to worry about paying their bills. They don't no longer have to really worry about getting pulled over. And not to say that that doesn't happen, because it does happen on occasion. But the point is, they don't have to worry about it the way the quote-unquote common Joe or somebody else has to worry about it. And you don't speak out. You are considered an individual who has forgotten where you came from. And when you are a person in a pristine and elite position, trust me when I tell you, speak to me if I'm wrong here, that is the last thing that you want. You do not want to be perceived as someone who has forgotten where you came from, because that's when you are all by yourself.
I love your dad's point, because in other words, these grievances have to be addressed and redressed, right? That has to happen. So we can do it this way. Oh, you don't want to pay it, or we could do it that way. Oh, you like this way better, right? So in other words, whatever you say, you got to say something. You got. I mean, I like that. And to your point about justice, social justice in the Black Lives Matter movement, part of it is actually what's happening, and part of it is the response to it. The fact is, there's almost never police wrongdoing in terms of, you know, when it goes through the justice system, something is broken, because even though, yes, you have to wait for the facts to come out and judge each case individually, it's not all cut and dried, but certainly it's more than like whatever it is, 8 convictions out of thousands.
But keep this in mind. We bloviate about how the NFL is a multi-billion-dollar establishment. They're number one. They're king. And so when you are a star in the NFL, particularly when star white players have nothing to say, because that wasn't what the case was during the civil rights movement. You had white folks out there standing up on behalf of black people and the transgressions and the incendiary things that were, and the insidious things that were happening to us. When you have guys today who are quiet, who come from the white community, that puts even more pressure on black stars to speak up.
That's why I agree with Richard
you got to say something.
Richard Sherman last week, excuse me, I disagree with Richard Sherman last week when he said, look, white players, should they speak up? They should, but I think if you're a white player in the NFL, these are your colleagues, your friends, even your opponents. These are people you work with, you live with, you play with. You have a responsibility to first sensitize yourself to the issue, educate yourself, and then absolutely show solidarity.
I think the other part that we've missed here is the perception of Black Lives Matter. You put it eloquently when you said it means Black Lives Matter too. The perception has been, if you support that, then you don't support that police lives matter, and you don't support that all lives matter.
That's totally wrong.
But that's totally wrong. So since that is the perception out there, even to a guy like Russell Wilson, who may not understand that, you feel like getting on that side of Black Lives Matter means that you oppose the other side. And I can be honest, I have an interesting view of this, because one of the policemen that was shot in Baton Rouge went to my church. So we had the memorial. We had the funeral there. As soon as those policemen were shot on Tuesday, we had 12 churches come together of all different colors, all different races, in fellowship But the one thing that was missing, even in that situation, black lives have been getting taken for years.
Yeah.
And there's been an epidemic on them lately in a run of unjustly things and justice system not coming to their aid. And before the policemen were killed, we didn't have the vigils or we didn't have the memorials. So what we have to do, you're right when Richard Sherman's statement is wrong, because once you get the Max Kellermans, once you get the Aaron Rodgers, once you get the Tom Brady's to come along, it gives a different voice. Now it's not about people complaining because they were wrong. It's about people standing up because people were wronged, and it's continuing to happen.
That's what the civil rights movement was all about, actually. Yeah.
And I think strong take also, again, you're saying that this isn't anything new. We also just have the visual now with the phones, too. And a guy like Russell Wilson will have more impact. Thank you so much. Always a strong take from you. When we come back here, the sun's coming out in Florham Park. It's beautiful. First take on the road.
I'm glad to be here.
Yes, year 2 for us. You are in your sophomore campaign, of course, here as head coach of the team. So you guys get the deal with Ryan Fitzpatrick, a 1-year deal. But you said you're not opposed to having 4 quarterbacks on your roster. So it's 1 year with Fitz, so what's the expectation for him?
Well, to come in hopefully and do better than he did last year, because we didn't make the playoffs. As an offense, we got to get better. As a defense, we got to get better. But there was great chemistry, and he led us to have 10 wins this year. We got to try to get more than that to get the playoffs.
Speak to me specifically when you say the defense has to get better. Explain.
So we busted some assignments last year. We gave up some cheap touchdowns, and we got to get better at that. Obviously, our tackling has to get better. It wasn't better every game there, and we got to learn to work together schematically.
As you bring up tackling, how about offensive tackles for a second? Like, this is something that's somehow underreported, I feel like, right? You got Clady in for DeBrickashaw Ferguson. If Clady is healthy, you got a beast on the line. But that's a big if to be plugging in for blindside protection, Coach. What's your expectation?
Well, he's healthy, so, coming in, we knew what we had when we got him. We replaced a good guy with another good guy. We love Brick, and we love Ryan, and he continues to get better day by day. He's healthy. We're just fine at that position.
What percentage of his old self do you feel like he is?
He's probably at 90% right now.
That's a pretty good player.
Yeah. Jason Morrow, I saw some promise a couple of years back. He was out last season with a shoulder injury. How's he looking thus far, and what you think you're going to get from the tight end spot, considering what you didn't get last year with him out?
Well, Jay's being healthy. I'm glad to have him out here running around right now. He's competing. We got a bunch of guys at that position that's competing right now. Kellen's our number 1. Tough blocker. Jason's coming in there. He's picking up the blocking very well. We all know he runs routes and catches the ball. He just has to stay healthy.
If you had to pinpoint one particular reason of all the issues that you had last year, you still ended up finishing 10-6. If you had to pinpoint one reason as to why you guys didn't make the playoffs, what would it be?
I don't think we realized how good we were until maybe 3/4 of the way through the season. I thought it was just belief and trust. And as we got to know each other and got to trust each other, and they got to trust each other on the field, they started playing better. By that time, we've blown too many ball games.
But what happened in the last game against Buffalo then?
Oh, they just beat us. They beat us. They came out and played better than us. We don't have any excuses for that. They beat us flat out.
How do you prepare your team to face that situation? It doesn't look like anyone's going to run away with the AFC East. So it's the last game of the season again. Win and you're in. How does Coach make sure that his team is the team that's the best team on that day this season?
Well, hopefully we can get in before the last game, and if so, we learn from last year's mistakes. We understand what we did wrong. Hopefully we matured in a year, and if it comes down to that, I think we got enough leaders on this team to carry us through.
Yeah, Coach, you said your team didn't realize how good they were, and you mentioned that you wanted to have a senior council of leadership. Is that part of it that could help you take the next step, the leadership issue?
That's part of it. It's not so much on the field as it is off the field, doing the right things and picking each other up when they get down, and the older guys have to step up and do that, and I think you need that in every locker room.
Who is the leader in the locker room?
We have a bunch of them right now. We have Mangold, you got Marshall, you got Decker, you got Revis, you got David Harris, you got Fitz, you got Gino. Forte came and added some. Clady added some. So we have a bunch of guys right now speaking up.
Talking about Forte and Clady, you also brought in McClendon in the middle on defense. Of the guys you brought in, of all the guys you brought in, who do you look at and go, that could be the pivotal guy, that could be the impact guy?
Well, right now, I think it's between Clady and McClendon. McClendon's so underrated. We lost a good player, and we got a good player. And, he can play up and down the line of scrimmage, and when Ryan's healthy, he can man the left side pretty good. So I think both of those guys are pivotal
Is
players.
McClendon still taking ballet lessons? I heard he was taking ballet lessons when he was with the Steelers. Is he still doing that now, Coach?
Sweet
I don't
feet.
think he's doing that now, but he gave up his tutu.
You know, let me get back to oh my goodness. Let me get back to Ryan Fitzpatrick, because he's here now, but it took him a while to get here. How concerned were you that he wouldn't be here? How confident are you, or were you, that this team would be fine no matter what happened?
Well, like I said before, if he got here and got hurt, we would have to play without him. So we were preparing. As the season gets near, you got to start planning to play with who's here and not who's not here. So we felt Geno made some good strides in the spring, and he was taking some reps. We hadn't put the pads on yet or done anything, but if Fitz goes down tomorrow, we're going to have to play with the guys we have here. So we were more or less waiting on a decision one way or the other, ready to move on or ready to have them back. But clarity was one thing that the guys in the locker room probably needed. So I think we were ready to move on either way.
I remember reading a quote where Geno Smith said he was playing for all 32 teams. Last time I checked, he plays for the New York Jets. Any issue with that quote whatsoever?
No, no issue at all. No issue at all. I think every player on every team, when you're auditioning and you're playing for your team, at some point you become a free agent. You're playing for everybody else, too. So that's normal.
Okay.
Boy, way to diffuse that, Coach. I thought he had you.
Not at all. Just asking the question. Just asking the question.
Year 2, what are you preaching?
Consistency, leadership, getting on each other. Chemistry, big-time chemistry, and we're trying to get that accomplished this
time. A lot of noise has been made about Darrelle Revis from the standpoint he still had a pretty good year, but you hear people speculating that he lost a step. We bring up what happened against DeAndre Hopkins, even though he got targeted 12 times. He had just 5 receptions, but it was 118 yards in that particular loss to the Houston Texans. What did you see from Darrelle Revis last year? What are you seeing from him now? How do you feel?
I feel great. We see the same great player we had. He got beat on the one deep ball against DeAndre, but everybody gets beat. And as much as he plays man and man's that side of the field, you know, anybody complaining about him probably doesn't have him right now. Mm-hmm. If he went on the market right now, I'm pretty sure 31 teams will take him.
I mean, if they're targeting him, he had 5 interceptions last year, only 2 the year before. That tells me they think he did lose a step. They're targeting him more. That might work out for you, Coach. You come away with the ball a little bit more.
I don't know if they targeted him more. I think it's a matter of reading coverages and things we put him in that put him in those situations to throw the ball at him. But if that's the case, I'm happy they do it.
What about the loss of Antonio Cromartie? He's gone now. You're taking screen. You're taking him from the slot, putting him to the outside, if I remember correctly. Talk to me about what you feel, how you feel about your secondary outside of Darrelle Revis.
Outside of Revis, I think our safeties are fine with Gilchrist and Calvin Pryor and Rontez stepping up in there. But the right corner spot between Buster and Marcus Williams and D. Milner right now, I think is a great competition right there. We lost a lot of veteran leadership with Cromartie right there. You know, it's tough being a number 2 corner when you have a great guy on the other side of you. You know, you're going to get about 25 passes almost every other game. So these guys got to develop mental toughness, and they got to stay out there, and I think they're doing that right now.
D. Milner, I haven't heard that name in quite a long time. I mean, you know, a couple of years ago, I mean, they would talk about him being a rookie and still being the number 1 corner. That's how small the position was, and then you got the Revis and Cromartie in here. How's he coming along? How's Milner coming along? How you feeling about him compared to whatever else you have?
Well, D's healthy right now. That's the biggest thing. It's the first time we really getting a chance to look at D. He was hurt all last year when we had him. Him coming in right now, being healthy and playing faster, and first time back in the scheme and having pads on right now. We're excited to see what he can do, but he's right there in competition with Buster and Marcus.
Does Forte diversify the offense in a way that was necessary? I mean, you're also replacing a very productive guy at that position, but maybe Forte a little more versatile. Is that the idea with him, to diversify the attack a little bit?
It is. He can do all 3. I know we lost Ivory. He was a great back. We think we got a great back in Forte, so he can flex out, and he's probably got a tad bit better running route skills than Ivory does. Not taking away anything from Ivory because he's a great player, but we think Matt can diversify some of the things we do.
So given that you keep replacing these good players with players who may be even more useful in the upcoming season, given the fact that you guys didn't realize how good you were until later in the season, and maybe that was the difference, how does Coach right now impress upon these guys how good they are, right? Like, how do you do that in preseason heading into the season so you can hit that stride at the earliest point.
Well, we got to play situational football better. We can't panic, and we got to understand we put them in situations thousands of times, so when they get in them in games, it'll be easy. There won't be any panic. Everybody will be on the same page. There's a confidence level there. Haven't been together for a year, which they weren't last year. Some of that was chemistry. So having been together for a year and going through the same things all the time and have everybody here at camp at the same time, I think that'll help us.
Pressure to make the playoffs this year?
No pressure. We're trying to make it every year. I mean, we're trying to make the playoffs. We're trying to get to the Super Bowl. So that's our goal, and anything short of that, I guess we'll be disappointed again like we were last year.
Todd Bowles, head coach of the New York Jets, thank you so much for making time, and thank you so much for having First Take here. We love being here at your beautiful facility. We appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Coach.
Best of luck this season.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate
More
it.
First Take after the break from Florham Park, New Jersey. It is beautiful out. The guys are out there working. First Take back here at Jets camp, and our next guest, all he did was lead the NFL in TD receptions and rack up more than 1,500 yards. All-pro receiver Brandon Marshall, friend of the show.
How you guys doing?
How are we doing? Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me. Congrats.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
What's up, big guy?
What's up, man? How you doing, man?
Hey, listen, I think you're a low-key Jets fan.
Oh.
Really? Listen, don't you ever say those things. I mean, I got love for the Jets. I'll admit it. I got love for the. I'm a lifelong Pittsburgh Steelers fan.
Really?
Yes, I am.
Not
Yes,
even
I am.
claiming
But
the
I got,
Giants
but,
here.
but I got love. I got love for the Jets and the Giants
You know
because I'm a
I'm
native
from
New
Pittsburgh.
Yorker.
Huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm a high-key Giants fan.
That's
so
right.
A pox on your house.
Oh.
There you
Stop
go.
it. Get them
Settle
out of
down.
here.
All right, Brandon, I know you've been asked about this, but I need you to explain it here on First Take. So you had a little bet going on with Antonio
a bit,
Brown.
a big bet.
Right? What prompted you to do this? Just break it down for everybody, what it was and why you decided to challenge him.
Well, I mean, there's games within a game. Like, we're so blessed to be out here. Look at this amazing day. And, you know, Antonio has really taken the position in the wide receiver game to a whole nother level with Julio Jones and Odell Beckham Jr. And it's just like the music industry, man. There's always going to be someone coming after you. So we're not going to just let him sit on the hill and think that, you know, he's going to be the best year in and year out. So it's just competition. It's all fun.
But what was it? It was for a car?
Well, yeah. Well, you know, in the NFL, we have this rule called no gambling.
Okay.
So, you know, we have to work through these details, but it's all for fun. That was just the thing to get it started.
Brandon Marshall. you know how I feel about you, bro. But at the same time, you do know my one criticism about you. You have no credibility when it comes to quarterback. I mean, this guy, any quarterback that's playing with him, he
Quarterback's
loves them.
best friend.
They're godlike figures. Okay, that's who he is.
help
Okay,
himself.
so I understand. I like Ryan Fitzpatrick.
You like Ryan?
I like Ryan. I like
right,
Ryan.
okay.
But not as much as I like Big Ben Roethlisberger.
I can understand.
So
I get
why
that.
are you making that bet knowing the condition, the handicap that you have? Because even though Ryan Fitzpatrick is good,
Yep.
you're not going to say he's Big Ben, are you?
Well, you got to understand at the wide receiver position, you guys just look at the individual. For a wide receiver to be successful, you do need a quarterback. And I love Ryan Fitzpatrick. I love him.
I knew
You're
you were
right.
gonna say that. I knew you
But then
were
I
gonna
have
say
Eric
that.
You're not
Decker on the
rooting
other
together,
side.
though.
I have Eric Decker on the other side. We have a stout offensive line, and we have Matt Forte.
Did you just say? I'm
We
sorry.
have Matt Forte.
Hold on.
And what does that mean?
Hold on. Did you-
More single coverage.
Wait a minute.
More
You just said a
single
stout
coverage.
offensive line. Did you just say
Stout.
that? The Brickishaw's gone. Ryan Clady, we got to hope he's healthy. Mangold is about 32 years of age. I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick, you know, I don't know how much
Listen,
time
listen
he
to
might
this,
have
listen
to pass the ball.
Listen to this.
Brandon.
It's about stats. You guys love stats on this show. We were fourth in rushing last year. We are number one in giving up sacks. I love my offensive line. Come on, man. Do your homework.
I was last. I
Do
did
your
my
homework.
homework.
Look at Matt Forte right there.
I didn't say that.
Look at Matt Forte.
Brandon, you can
Running
spin
the
it.
ball,
You
catching
can-
the ball in the
No.
backfield.
You can spin it however you want. Forte's still a useful back, and Eric Decker is fine on the other side. And
Fine?
and- yeah, he's fine.
That's it.
That's it. That's
He
it.
all right. He's all right.
And Fitzpatrick is okay. He had 2 good seasons
Oh,
in the
my
NFL.
gosh.
You are the only elite player at a skills position on offense on your team. Is that or is that not true?
That's false. That's false. Eric Decker isn't elite.
What?
Ryan Fitzpatrick isn't elite, throwing
No.
for almost 5,000 yards.
No, he is not
31
elite.
touchdowns.
Right.
That's not elite.
Actually,
Put
he
this
threw
man
for
on a lie
3,900
detector
yards.
test.
You got to
guys
get to
are going-
4,000 before you get to 5,000.
Nick
okay?
Mangold isn't elite.
I said
Yes, he
skills
is.
position.
He
Skills
is.
position.
Skills
No,
position.
and Eric
Said that.
Decker is not elite. No, and neither is Fitzpatrick. No,
Oh
they are
my
not elite.
gosh.
No one has
Oh
ever
my
said
gosh.
elite
They're
for those
good.
guys
We'll
ever.
take that.
They're
We'll
good.
take
They're
that.
good.
We'll take
Brandon.
that. I'll take that.
Speaking of elite, Irv, the playmaker,
Yep.
he called you out and he said that you are a Hall of Famer, no question. What was your reaction to hearing Michael Irvin,
Yeah.
the great wide receiver, telling you that you're a Hall of Famer?
Well, I didn't hear it. Actually, I think it was on our website, our team's website. Man, that's just humbling, especially coming from him. He's a guy that I've always looked up to, a guy that I lean on right now. But, you know, I try to stay away from all of that talk right now because you know, I have a lot of work to do, and I'm not there yet. I'm not even close. Not even close. Can't be mentioned with the greats yet.
Yes, you can, and yes, you are.
No, I wish.
Wait, hold on. Let's listen. Just between you and me, all right? No one's watching for a second. You have to be frustrated on some level in the sense that when you were younger and the bloom was still on the rose and there was all this potential, you were constantly in conversations with the best young receivers in the game. That's a sexy place to be, like right now with Odell Beckham and Julio Jones, and you mentioned Antonio Brown and these guys. Frequently, I hear your name. Even when I'm talking about them, I skip over you, and you are absolutely in that category. And you've done it with quarterbacks in recent years especially who are simply not, as Stephen A. correctly points out, a future Hall of Famer like Ben Roethlisberger. And there is a logjam at the receiver position in voting in terms of a wait list for the Hall of Fame. And you are in the middle of what looks like a Hall of Fame career. It's got to be frustrating on some level for you, Brandon Marshall.
No, well, I would say this. The only thing that's frustrating is that I'm going in year 11, and I haven't been to the playoffs. And every single day I walk out on this field, I have one thing in mind, to win the championship. And that takes a lot. It takes a lot from the individual. It takes a lot from the players in the locker room. It takes a lot from the guys upstairs. So I am really pissed off about that. And we were so close last year, but close isn't good enough. But I really feel comfortable with everyone we have here, especially with an elite quarterback and Ryan Fitzpatrick leading the way. You guys had Coach Bowles here. Players between Lovie Smith and Bill
18, 20 elite quarterbacks?
I got Lovie Smith and Bill Parcells. He snuck that right in there.
I got respect for Ryan Fitzpatrick. But did it ever occur to you, Brandon Marshall, that it may very well be your fault why you end up playing for good quarterbacks as opposed to the great ones because you're constantly calling them great? And maybe, just maybe, dare I say, Brandon Marshall is not holding quarterbacks accountable enough because you too busy showing them love.
Time out.
You too busy showing them love.
I haven't held any quarterbacks
accountable. You gonna get me? You gonna get me started? You gonna tell me you held Jay Cutler? You gonna tell me you held Jay Cutler accountable? Why you did it when you showed up with the New York Jets? When you were in Chicago, you did everything but give him flowers.
I'm a ride with my guys, man. And when it was Jay Cutler, you know, I'm gonna have his back to the end. Ryan Fitzpatrick, same thing. You're right. You know, I'm a team guy, and I really believe in my quarterbacks.
In all seriousness, what role did you play, if any at all, in getting Ryan Fitzpatrick to that one-year deal, to get back here, to get in here in training camp? Because I know it had to drive you crazy, the thought of being having this season without him.
It was just simple. It just internally, I just, you know, spoke from the heart and told, you know, the people that, you know, was at the table how I felt about Ryan and how the team felt about Ryan. That was it. And I just got out the way and did my job and to be a wide receiver and let them do their job and get the deal done.
Holding account, not just holding accountable, but building up expectations, partly because of like the kind of PR job you did with the media through those years.
Man.
I mean, last year I heard people picking Jay Cutler to win the MVP.
You mean 2 years ago?
2 years ago.
Because of you.
By the way, in the NFL MVP, not another football league, the NFL MVP. What has people lost their minds? Damn, Brandon Marshall, you should be a publicist when you're done with your NFL.
And I'll go out on a limb and say this again.
Don't do it.
I truly believe Alshon Jeffrey stays healthy. All right, and then you have Kevin White. If this rookie can come in and catch 55-plus balls, Jay Cutler can be an MVP this year. I truly believe that.
Can I leave?
I believe that.
Can I leave?
There is nothing.
I want to leave. First take right now and take the rest of this. I can't believe you just said that with a straight face.
There is nothing in his past that suggests that could happen.
Jay Cutler, the MVP, really?
Listen, let me tell you why.
Really?
He has all the tangibles.
He's had it for 11 years. Where's that gotten him?
And now,
where's that gotten him?
Even the work ethic?
Listen, sometimes it just takes a little longer. Yes, even the work ethic. This guy has been taking guys all off season to the side, bringing them to his house, bringing them to Nashville.
Oh, we brought him to the house.
And now
that I knew he brought him.
Did he pay for that flight? Did he pay for that flight?
I don't think he paid for the flight.
I don't think you pay for the play. You
Brandon,
got
I
to be
thought
kidding me. Oh,
that
my
like
Lord.
Cam Newton or Aaron Rodgers or Andrew Luck or someone like that was going to win MVP.
No.
But now that I knew that he took people to his house,
Hey,
now
listen,
it's Jay Cutler.
I'm
If
telling
my
you, go to
wires
Vegas right
were
now, but
not-
you can't gamble if you're an NFL player.
If my wires were not attached to my seat, I would have walked off this. Jay Cutler,
You know the
the
fact-
MVP. 11 years this dude has been in the league. Okay, he's made about 2 playoff appearances.
Listen.
He quit in the NFC Championship game. Right, he couldn't work. He couldn't
Stop
backpedal in the pocket, but he could pedal
What do
on
you
the
have?
sideline
What do you
on
have?
a
A Jay
bicycle.
Cutler book or something?
I don't need a Jay
Like,
Cutler
how
book.
do you remember all this stuff?
I got
Come
all
on,
that
man.
memorized.
I
It's
wanna
easy.
can
It's
we
easy.
can we focus
Jay
on you for
Cutler.
1
Oh,
second,
my
though?
Lord, I can't believe
Brandon,
you.
is it true you dropped 20 pounds on
Yes.
the Bulls diet to
Yes,
get ready? What
Todd
is the
Bowles
Bulls
diet.
diet, and why was that important? How is it going to impact you?
Well, actually, it's called the Sarah Mailman diet, and
Okay.
it's a food sensitivity test where they draw your blood, and our bodies have a chemical reaction with everything we put in our body. And there's a doctor down in Florida that I was introduced to in 2010 by Ricky Williams and Ronnie Brown. And what they do is they take your blood and then they built a menu, a diet specifically for your system. So for me, I can have just plain cabbage steamed and I may gain 2 pounds because my body reacted in a negative way, and that's inflammation. Whereas if I just have some greens or green beans and I can eat as much as I want, and I'll stay right at 225 the next day.
I just figured
I
something
need
out
this
in this
test.
interview.
I
I
want the
figured
test.
something out about you, by the way. Brandon Marshall actually drinks the Kool-Aid because
He dropped 20 pounds.
No. I'll tell you why. Because you have no reason to pump up Jay Cutler anymore. But because you actually drank the Kool-Aid, you're still pumping him up as though he can win MVP.
You're still on that.
Yes.
He just got
I
him
know
last
that.
year.
You're
He's
still
just
on
being nice.
Well,
He's just
listen,
being nice.
Alshon Jeffrey, when healthy, this guy would have probably led the receivers in receiving yards last year
I
if he
figured
stayed
out what
healthy.
you're doing. I know exactly what you're doing. He's looking out for Alshon Jeffrey.
Hate him, man.
about Jay Cutler.
Hate
He's
him,
looking out
man.
for his boy
Alshon.
Alshon
Hate him,
Jeffrey.
man. I
don't
That's
think-
what he's saying.
Yeah.
That's what he's saying.
I think
it
Alshon
can't be
Jeffrey
Jay
will be
Cutler.
fine.
It can't be Jay
Hey,
Cutler.
Alshon Jeffrey, that's my brother. Pay the man.
Okay,
I'm just
okay.
ready for Alshon just to,
I'm
when
good.
we go out to dinner,
Now
for
you
him to
got
pay
it.
for dinner. That's what I'm
I'm
looking
good.
for.
I'm good. I'm
That's
good.
what I'm looking
I
for.
support you. It's all right. We all right. Because you're looking out for Alshon. He can play.
Okay.
Jay Cutler.
We're done with Cutler now. Can we go to Tom Brady? So
Let's go
in
Tom
your
Brady.
division, he's going to be out 4 games, of course,
Yeah.
getting suspended there for the Deflategate stuff. Did you think that was a fair punishment?
Well, there's 2 things from a player's perspective. One, we're one.
Yeah.
The NFLPA, we got to stick together. So obviously, we want to have a fair process. But on the other hand, there's a competitive edge thing there, and as of right now, we don't have time to deal with that. That's their problem. That's something for them to talk about. We have our own issues and own challenges that we have to work through. So I'm gonna let them deal with that in Foxborough.
All right.
Works for me.
Yep.
Good to see you, bro.
Brandon, sorry you had to
By
put
the
up
way-
with both of them. You
By
guys
the way,
got
just
your
for
team today. He getting in
clarification,
there, too.
Tom Brady, elite quarterback.
Elite quarterback.
That's what elite
All
quarterback
right, we'll
looks
see.
like.
All right, so
Yes.
right here,
No,
right
that's
now,
Tom Brady's an elite.
what does Fitzpatrick have to do to be considered an elite quarterback?
How about passing
Playoffs.
for 5,000 yards?
Okay, that's it.
Making the playoffs.
5,000, make the
5,000,
playoffs.
make the playoffs.
Playoffs.
Make sure that you're an all-pro.
Okay, done.
And
When
don't
it's
throw
done.
3
When
it's
interceptions
winning,
against
it's winning.
Buffalo.
So
And don't throw 3 interceptions against Buffalo.
Playoffs,
No,
done.
no. Gamma rays.
mental
he has to
health
get hit with
awareness
gamma
Yes.
rays.
Mental health
We love
awareness
that.
day.
you do
there it
this.
is.
Got it.
We love that you
Got
do
it,
this.
bro.
Put that on.
Right
Got
Yeah, Brandon,
Got it.
I'm shaking your hand
We got
here.
you. We
Thank
got
you.
you.
Always a pleasure. Always
Thank you,
good to
Brandon.
see you. More First Take from Jets Camp
And no
in
3
a
interceptions
moment.
against
Stay
Buffalo.
with us here. Darrelle Revis will be joining us. A lot more to get into from Florham Park. Beautiful day. We are having so much fun. These two are... Darrell's already here. Hey, hey. All right, we'll be with him in just a minute.
What's going on? How you doing?
My man. What's up, baby?
This man needs no introduction. One of the best cornerbacks in NFL history. He has stranded many on his island, one Revis Island. Darrelle Revis here with us on First Take. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for
Good
having
to
me.
see you, bro.
Yes,
Yes.
thanks.
All right, so you're in your 2nd year and your 2nd stint with the Jets, right? Todd
Yes.
Bowles has a year under his belt now. You guys locked up Fitz. You were 1 win away from the playoffs. How far are you going to go this year?
Our expectations is going really far. We want to get into the playoffs, and we want to make some noise in playoffs. So that's our goal. That's our main goal as a team.
As a defensive player, how concerned were you that your quarterback, obviously an offensive player, was in danger of not being here? What was that like for you? Considering the fact also that you were on the Jets years ago, obviously,
Yes.
before you departed, and there were some quarterback issues in the past.
You definitely do not want to, come into a season without your starting quarterback. That's very tough to try to build team chemistry, with your guy. So, I mean, he had a great year last year, and it's glad that we got him back.
Well, you were, in my view, the last true shutdown corner. And nowadays, with these athletes at wide receiver and the way the rules are, it feels like there's no such thing. A shutdown corner can't exist anymore. My question is, physically, are you still a shutdown corner? Is there still such a place as Revis Island?
No question. No question. I'm still playing at a high level. So, I'm getting ready for this year and go after it, get after as much as I can. I still think I can play at a high level.
Do you feel that you're being targeted anymore? You had 5 interceptions last year, which is more than we're used to seeing you get because they don't target your side of the field. Are you being targeted more? And if so, can that help you in a sense?
I get targeted every year. I think that's the thing people don't understand is they game plan. They come after you. Everybody got strengths. Everybody got weaknesses. So they definitely do take their chances when they can.
Do you feel you've lost a step? Like people have been speculating that Darrelle Revis is still elite, but he's not the same. He may have lost a step. What do you feel?
Well, I don't run the 4.3 as I used to back in 2007, but I can still play. I think for me it's more of a mental game. It's more of angles with me at this point and just being very technician of the game, and that's what I've been doing.
This defense right here, I mean, you got Muhammad Wilkinson, you retained him, Sheldon Richardson is there, Leonard Williams is there, you still got Pace in the crew,
yes.
And, back there with you at the linebacker spot. You're in the secondary. Talk to me about what you think this defense is going to be this year compared to what we saw it be last year.
Yes, we were top 5 last year. Great in the pass defense, great in the run defense. I think we're a lot faster this year, though. We got a lot of young guys. We got Jordan Jenkins, who's a DN. We have Darren Lee, who we drafted in the first round. So we got more speed on the defensive side. I think you would see us definitely being more aggressive and being more of a speed-type defense that we have. So sky's the limit. We're expecting to be in the top 5 again this year.
Speaking of top 5, who do you think the top 5 cornerbacks are in the game right now?
Man, it's tough. It's some
and are
great
you
talent.
one of them?
It's great talent, man. I don't really boast or brag about my game. The numbers speak for themselves, for me. But it's some great guys. Richard Sherman. You got Pat Peterson. You got Jenkins here in New York now. I mean, Tremont Johnson is out in Los Angeles. So I mean, you can go down the list. You got Chris.
Years ago, when you saw a guy like Asamoah, it was like, maybe Asamoah is better than Revis. You had to be sitting back on, come on, people, stop. Are you still there psychologically with your place at the position, or do you see guys now who are younger and coming up and think like, okay, maybe they got it?
It's a lot going on these days, especially with social media. Pat P came out and said, I know I'm the best. And at the position that we play, that's the way you're supposed to feel. You're supposed to feel that you're the best and know that you're the best because you're out on the island and you're covering guys. It's you and that receiver out there. So definitely, I mean, everybody feels like they're the best at the position because they play at a high level.
I want to know, as a corner in this game, as an elite corner in this game, how do you feel about the way cornerbacks are dissected? Just the other day we were talking about Josh Norman, and you got people saying he's with the Redskins, but they basically ran zone schemes in Carolina. That's what they're going to be doing in Washington. He's not a quote unquote true cover guy. I'm not saying that. I'm saying these are what the kind of people say when they dissect him and Richard Sherman compared to a Patrick Peterson, compared to a you or whatever. How do you feel about the way cornerbacks are being critiqued this year? I mean, in this day and age, and is it accurate in your mind?
How you dissect them in today's game,